one more. Check. Sounds good. All right. So what's up, Skip?
Hi.
Hi. This is podcast number 1. Joshua Ray Farmer here with Skip, and I have something quickly to read for you and get some insight. So we're going to jump right into a book written by Frankel. It is called Man's Search for Meaning. Pretty popular book. After I'm done reading this, since I've read the book in its entirety, this is just going to be a paragraph, but I'm actually going to lend the book to Skip and see what she thinks about it. The existential vacuum manifests itself mainly in a state of boredom. Now we can understand Schopenhauer when he said that mankind was apparently doomed to vacillate eternally between the two extremes of distress and boredom. In actual fact, boredom is now causing and certainly bringing to psychiatrists more problems to solve than distress. And these problems are growing increasingly crucial, for progressive automation will probably lead to an enormous increase in leisure hours available to the average worker. The pity of it is that many of these will not know what to do with all their newly acquired free time. I think that's super interesting.
Amen.
Yeah. And this
right on, Victor.
This is after the Holocaust. He was a prisoner of the Nazi war. He was imprisoned in a few different camps, but mostly Auschwitz, notorious for being one of the worst. I believe this was published in the late 40s, like 1949. I guess I should have known that. But Victor Frankel, c. 1949. So this is written after he was a psychiatrist going into the Holocaust, and then it's a very interesting book. You'll see the rest of it. I won't get into too many details, but the fact that he's saying this in the 40s, that he's saying that specifically automation will lead to more leisure time to the average worker, and it's boredom that seems to be causing more of the problems, not distress. So I see that as like distress is kind of the good part of life that kind of forces you to expand or challenge yourself. And then he's saying that it's boredom that's causing more of the problems that he's having as a psychiatrist to deal with. So, of course, I bring that up because I'd be interested to see what you think and what your experiences are just in general about that. So Skippy is a morning show host on the radio and also a licensed therapist. You can find her at Shut Up Skippy on Instagram, on Snapchat and Twitter. And yeah, that's it. What's up, Skip?
Hi.
So what do you think about that?
I don't know what it's like to be bored.
Good.
But I could say this. I think that what he's talking about in terms of people being bored is they don't like to be alone in their own head. And so there's a sense of if you can't be mindful and okay just by yourself, you have to stay super busy. So that's just my thing. Like there was a long time where I had to have like nervous energy and stay busy. Now I can kind of relax and be in my own place and I'm not bored per se, but I just prefer to stay busy.
So would you think that, because something I really got out of it, and of course, having read the whole book recently, it kind of gives me a little insight on really where he's going with this. But the idea that this guy's been in some of the worst, imaginable environments to mankind, like just about as bad as it can get, things he's had to deal with and things he's seen. And he's saying, again, this is after he's been released out of after the war's over. And he's saying that, specifically boredom is this bigger problem, which is very interesting because, again, I would think specifically that stress and being overworked and being challenged too much, especially in his environment, and in the 40s dealing with the things he did, that would be the benefit or the benefactor of most of his problems. And not just his. He's specifically talking about working men or just people, I think, working people. And during that time, for it to be boredom, that's the issue.
Well, I think when you're in moments of distress or when you're like having to, handle like the basics, you shut down parts of your brain and emotions that allow for more existential thinking, like he's talking about. So you're going through the grind. You're not really thinking about a bigger picture. And in those moments of distress, maybe you're just in survival mode. So then when you can relax a little bit and catch your breath, that's when your head starts thinking. And then that's when you get bored because you have nothing to do because you've already made sure you've done everything you need to do for basic survival. So
I think, I see that. So like, when it comes to the boredom part, that's kind of the part that I want to focus on as opposed to the distress part, because I think stress, most people see it as super negative. They don't see the positive in it. Or at least I've tended to, especially growing up. You think that like, oh, this is bad because it hurts, or this is bad because physically it's challenging, or mentally it's challenging, or my head hurts. You try to figure out a problem or something relating to school or something like that. When you're younger, it's like, oh, I don't like this because it doesn't feel good. And you think that that's maybe a bad thing. So you don't realize that it's, like I point out to my children all the time, that when you can't do something and it's frustrating, that's great. That's an opportunity for you to do something you've never done before, or learn something new, or and then once they get past it, if you show that struggle through, say, learning to ride a bike, even at home, that it's going to feel odd and hard and frustrating at first. And then a couple tries and a couple of days later, you've gotten better. And then that progress. So going back to the boredom part, I feel like the interesting thing, again, going back to the idea that it's also from the 40s and after his environment that he was exposed to, you have today, he's saying that automation is going to be one of the biggest reasons why people have free time. And there's no way he could have known anything about the internet or, technology that we have today, or any of the stuff that we have today that's more automated than we could probably have even imagined for us as kids. Tap of the button on your phone, you pretty much can have anything at any time. So for that to be relevant then is probably even more relevant than he could have ever known today, meaning like we're so much more automated, and it's leading to this amount of boredom that I think in some ways it kind of leads to this next idea of causing more problem, almost causing problems on purpose. Or like we as people are kind of looking for issues, or looking for, I guess you could say looking for, something to just stir up.
Oh, I think you bring up, that's why people get in internet fights.
Trolls.
You know what I mean? Like, it's just to stir up emotions. But I think what he was basing it on is the Industrial Revolution had already happened. So he'd already seen this idea of more leisure time. So that was like the predecessor, or the thing that he could point back to. And then fast forward, now we're like so much further along. So it gives us, I think it goes back to like, it gives us more time to think, and what do you do in that time? So people are bored, I think, because they don't know what they like. They don't know what they enjoy doing. They don't have people they enjoy spending time with, or know how to communicate and connect. And so now, fast forward, we have all these options, and there's just a sense of like, what's the purpose? What's the greater, goal? Because we have plenty of stuff to stay busy, but is any of it fulfilling? That's the difference. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So we can stay busy and bored.
Absolutely.
I think we can stay really, maybe like somebody working their 9-to-5 job that's super understimulating. They're busy. They're doing things, answering phones. Maybe they're on the computer, filing paperwork, filling out paperwork, monotonous sort of daily tasks. So they're physically doing things, but incredibly bored. And so the idea too, and what it's easy to jump into the automated world and just let things happen. Like it's really easy to just let, sort of even technology. A good point is, not to pick on social media, but, social media is a great tool, but it also can lead to that's your way of communicating with people probably too often, or at least that's like your sole way of communicating with people, which also in that communication, even though you're staying busy and you're messaging and you're going back and forth, or you're reading, or you're consuming other people's content in any way, you're also, even though you're being active, you're kind of bored. So now you're actually looking for negative stuff, or you're sharing things maybe that
something
aren't
to excite you.
Yeah, you're
good, bad, or otherwise.
Right. And so, and again, the idea of it like saying that it's, automated, and that it's leading to, the boredom's leading to all these issues. Again, he could have had no foresight in today's world. And I think that that's probably something I absolutely believe in, that boredom, that's a dangerous thing, just being bored. So I would say too that, like in the workplace or at home or just in general, I don't know, like I'm never bored. And when I was a kid, I was bored, and all I did was get in trouble. That based off the boredom, looking for something to do.
Which you could take forward to adults.
Yeah, of course. And so now, it's hard for me to even relate to it as an adult because I literally never have time. If I'm bored, I'm like, oh, good. I see it as if there was a chance to be bored, now I could relax, chill out for the day. So maybe it's, again, like people's lives get so automated, they have this extra free time, don't know what to do with it. And like he was pointing out, the average worker will have this extra free time they won't know what to deal with, or they won't know what to do with it. And it's just, to me, that's interesting because I feel like he wrote that today, for today's world. It's very, very strange. So you're never bored.
Mm-mm.
I'm never bored.
Maybe we're terrible people to be talking about this topic.
No. I think it's best because I think a lot of people are bored. I know a lot of people are bored.
Well, I work with people that are bored.
On a regular basis.
Yes.
Bored. I think I hear, if people are communicating with me throughout the day, I'm getting a lot like, hey, what's up? Or
they're just they want distraction.
Yeah, they're bored.
Right.
They're bored. So I don't know what kind of trouble that can lead to. I just kind of try to just shield it away. But yeah, it's pretty, most people are pretty bored. So that's why to me it's interesting because I'm never bored. Somebody asked me the other day, like, what do you do, for fun or, whatever. And I don't even know how to answer it. Like, what do I do? A lot of things. I got a lot of things going on. Like my question back to them, I would never ask them what they do because if they're already asking me, like chances are like they're going to go off on something boring probably or whatever. I just don't really want to know, but it is interesting. It'd be nice to know what you have to say about this book.
I'm looking forward to reading it. Yeah. I mean, he's one of the most important people in modern day psychology. So that's,
he came up with, and I still don't, I don't understand it. As soon as I read the book, I realized I didn't know anything about it, but I think it calls logotherapy. I don't know if that's...
that one's not... I'll be totally honest. Sometimes when you get into like theories and the people behind them, I have to go back and get into like my student brain because there's a lot of information that I've just filed away that's really hard to access. So like I had to look. I was like, okay, what was his background? Okay, then, like that's why Google's made me a little lazy too because I can just log online and check it out real quick. But
yeah, the logotherapy is something he tried to explain in here, and I'm not sure how much is used today, if at all. I kind of feel silly even saying anything about it because it could be super popular, but he does explain it to you in the later chapters.
Right now I'm currently Googling.
Yeah, so he has this part here that says, logotherapy, keeping in mind the essential transistories of human existence, is not pessimistic, but rather activistic. To express this point figuratively, we might say, the pessimist resembles a man who observes with fear and sadness that his wall counter, from which he daily tears a sheet, grows thinner and thinner with each passing day. On the other hand, the person who attacks the problem of life actively is like a human who removes each successive leaf from his calendar and files it neatly and carefully away with its predecessors. So that's definitely two ways. It's like a kind of a balance between, I want to say positivity and negativity, but.
So I think there's pieces of his stuff that's really important, but then it gets a little too brainy. Does that make sense? Like too existential, too like, yeah. I feel like even with a master's degree in it, like it sometimes gets too big for me to even consume. Like I understand the concepts of it. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. But then like when you start thinking about this stuff, like my head starts to spin, and I think I'm a pretty smart person. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, we do have inner conflict. We do have to deal with things like right and wrong and, death and love and hate and all of those things that are internal. But then we also need to I think sometimes step back and go, okay, what am I going to do with my day today? Like it can't sit in my head all day long.
Absolutely.
And that's where I think sometimes it gets a little whoa. Like I have to
be overwhelming.
Stop. It gets overwhelming because I'm like, where am I? What realm is this? Who am I talking to right now? This is getting a little big. Me. Right. And so anyway, when you're talking about some of that stuff and I was just Googling just to kind of remind myself, okay, okay. Yeah, this I can digest for about 5 to 10 minutes at a time. Then I got to step back and then go into it. Because sometimes your head just goes in too many places. And I think though, that brings up the point that sometimes we don't want to get into our head, because it can go too many places and then it feels overwhelming. And it's just easier to step back and be like, you know what I really need right now? Like a video game.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Like,
or for me, it's some sort of like
a tabloid.
Yeah.
Like,
I get into some sort of YouTube video.
Right.
Or something.
Right.
Like just a totally, and I'm sure a lot of people use their somewhere through their mobile devices. They go to the internets and look at whatever it is to kind of do that.
Right.
Exactly.
You just kind of have to check out back, get back
so
to a
you
safe
work
place.
as a licensed therapist.
Uh-huh.
You're working, I'm sure in that business, you're constantly kind of trying to pull from toolboxes of like, what do I do with this?
Mm-hmm.
And some of it becomes, I'm sure, eventually second nature, but you're probably always looking to do something a little further or kind of hone your skills a little more. So you're really having to constantly use that part of your brain that you do have to kind of silence sometimes. And you can kind of tell the difference, right, when you're doing that as opposed to when you're just communicating, just kind of, just going with it. So as a licensed therapist, have you seen this? Like, have you seen people, or like the idea of people needing, like, I guess if we're going back to the board idea, how to add a different type of value, or not value, how to get them to see something in life that's I'm not sure exactly how to say that.
So I think I understand where you're going. I'm already jumping ahead of you.
Mm-hmm.
So I work with a lot of people who are trying to get sober, and people typically use because they're trying to fill some void. Now, sometimes that could be because they've had some sort of traumatic experience, or it basically there's a hole, and you can fill that really good for a while with a drug of choice and alcohol, a poor coping skill, basically, right? So you take that away from people and try to get them sober, and then they're bored because now all of their like good feelings or distraction are wrapped up in using that particular substance or pattern of behavior. And so, a lot of people are bored and they don't know what to do. And boredom is the worst thing for someone trying to stay sober.
Right. Right.
So then what I have to do is be like, okay, well, you have to figure out what you like doing. Well, their brain's all messed up anyways, chemically, because their highs and lows, the experiences that you have using substances take you to places that aren't a normal high. Like it doesn't matter how good the food is, the sex is, how much you love somebody, you're never going to get that spike in feel good hormones as you are as using meth. Okay. You're not. So you have to bring that back down, your expectations back down. Right. So anyways, there's a lot of boredom, and then people are like, I don't know what to do at this time. Same thing happens if you have like a mom that's a stay-at-home mom, and now all of a sudden her kids are gone and like hasn't really nurtured her relationship with her husband very much. They don't really particularly like each other or have a lot of hobbies. So they're like, what do we do with all this time? And this sounds absolutely silly, but one of the first things I do is I give them a list, and it's called, it's a pleasurable activities. And there's about 150 pleasurable activities on there. And I hand it to them and I go try some of these. And they look at me like I'm crazy. And I tell them, first of all, you need to fill your time. And secondly, you need to figure out the things you like so that when distress comes, you have some gas in the tank to handle it. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. But you would be surprised if you ask somebody tomorrow, what kind of stuff do you like doing that's just enjoyable? And they're like, oh, I don't know. Well, read a book, wash your dog, look at a magazine. There's one on there. It's like fantasize about the 5 hottest people you would want to hook up with, but these are things people don't think about because they just want to stay busy all the time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And it takes effort.
It takes effort. It does to get to know yourself. It takes absolute effort to get to know yourself. And it's like, well, I just don't really want to put the effort in there because I'm tired. Well, then you're going to be bored. Mm-hmm. One other thing that I was thinking about that though, and now I just totally lost my train of thought.
I'm glad you said exactly all that too, because that's absolutely where I was going with that question was, what do people do?
No. Well, and so I'm like, you have to go and try stuff. You have to figure out what it is that lights your fire. And here's the other part that I tell them, like, the satisfaction in life has to come from the little things in life. Because if you're always waiting for the next big vacation, or the worst is people talking about how they're waiting for retirement, you're going to get to retirement and nothing is going to be exciting or fulfilling because you don't get to the end of the ride, and now it's all figured out and life is perfect. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So you have to find the entertainment and the excitement and the satisfaction in like little things, like taking a walk before we started the podcast today, or, really enjoying the music you're listening to, those kind of things.
And I absolutely agree, because life is made up of all the little moments. And if you can't find and I wish I remember where that we heard. I wouldn't be surprised it was actually in this book, but that life is made up of those little moments. And if you can find ways to find happiness in them, then your rate of your success for happiness your rate's gonna be much higher.
Right.
If you're always waiting for the high thing, the end result, you're going to be really dissatisfied the majority of the time, because those highlights are just a lot less frequent.
But that takes practice, and it takes effort, and it takes putting aside your own cynicism and sarcasm. And trust me, I'm really good at both of those things, to be like, oh, wow, like this is a really enjoyable, I don't know, cup of coffee I'm having. Or for me, I've learned to associate certain feelings with things. So like, if I see like a dandelion, I automatically think of my kids. So I can be walking down the street doing something I'm not necessarily liking, but I see that and I'm like, oh, but you have to plant those things into your day, and it takes effort to make those.
So you almost kind of have to like build that up upon that. Like
it's not almost, you do.
Yeah. You get this one and you grab another one. It's like looking for gold in the moments.
Absolutely.
So I remember,
because what are you waiting for? Your 2 weeks of vacation a year? Like, is that what you're really going to work 50?
Or the weekend?
Yeah.
If you're just waiting for the weekend?
God, no.
That
There's
just
a lot of
doesn't sound
hours
fun.
Monday through Friday to get to the weekend. And I've worked those jobs that I hate. So by like Sunday, I'm anxious and angry, and I don't want to go to work on Monday. So it ruins my whole Sunday. Then it all starts again. You know, you get like 24 hours in your whole work week to actually be like satisfied, or your whole week.
Right. So. Yeah. That's not a good trade-off.
No, thank you.
Yeah. It's especially because if you're done by Friday night and you got to prepare back again for Sunday, you're really barely getting a full 48 hours of like time.
It's just that.
Yeah, that's not enough time to be looking forward to. So it makes me think about like me working as a tattoo artist. I'm constantly, the only way for me to work is somebody has to be present. I have to be with somebody else, unless I'm tattooing myself, and I gave that up like 10 years ago.
I do that.
It's not that it was painful. It's just that it's painful to look at once it's over. I just had to stop. So other than the fact it was free, the benefits were pretty minimal. But I'm spending a lot of time with people. It could be a few hours. It could be all the way, from 30 minutes up to sometimes 6-7 hours, and frequently monthly or at least yearly. And so I'm hearing a lot of people, bored is just absolutely part of the conversation most of the time. Like, oh, I'm just so bored. I don't know what to do. Or what do you do? Where do you go? Fresno's so boring. The town we live in is so boring. Just this place is boring. And I'm thinking that's kind of interesting, considering that we live in a state specifically that most people travel around the world to come visit. So to say that it's boring here is almost, I don't even quite understand it. And then I ask people, what do they do? And there's overwhelming amounts of times where I don't get any answers. Like, oh, well, I like to go out with my friends. That's really all I get from like hundreds and hundreds of people that are telling me this often. And then I always kind of try to think like, what can I tell them that I do that they would be interested in doing? And sometimes I don't really think I have the answers. Like, I don't know what to say to them. Like, people, if I put something on Snapchat every morning, I like to, record that I'm getting up at a certain time and running before a certain hour, getting some stuff done. And mostly it's to hold myself accountable, because people see it. And if they see that I haven't posted something before 5 o'clock, that I haven't gone running, which is my goal is to run 1 mile minimum before 5 a.m. And if I post something on Snapchat and somebody sees it, kind of encourages them to do it too. And I get a lot of times people say like, oh, I wish I could come do that with you. Or, when do you start? I need to start running. Where do you start running so I can come meet you and go with you? And it's nobody's came and ran with me. I'm not saying they should or they have to, but what I'm hearing is, and they can do it whenever, at whatever rate that they need to in their life, or, whatever hour. But if they're saying they want to do it and they're not doing it, but they have the time to like watch what I'm doing and message me on it, not that is equivalent to the amount of time it takes to run, but they just don't do it. So like the people want to do things, but I don't know, like what do they do besides?
I think we find ourselves in a situation where a lot of things are easy, and sometimes finding motivation to do things is a lot harder than we want it to be.
Right.
So what ends up happening is it's like, yes, I want these things, but you mean I have to do the work? And that's where it's like, well, it should be easy because we have gotten really conditioned to things being easy. So I think that's where some of that comes in. Like, I want it to change, but I don't want to have to do too much work to make a change. So like, for instance, like, oh, well, I'm bored. There's nothing to do. Well, you could go out and try new things and put yourself out there and maybe like, do a little soul searching or try some things and suck at it, but do it anyway. Yeah, well, that's just, I'm tired after work and I really don't want to have to do, it's like, so you really clearly don't.
Right.
And not that look, I am a cheerleader for change and good living, but like I can't come to you with a secret pill of motivation
or solution. Actually,
I can come to you with a whole bunch of solutions, but you got to do the footwork.
Right. The solution is always going to be something that you decide is going to work for you. Right. So we can present it. So other than like that, it gets boring talking about boredom.
I know. I was like, okay, let's talk about
bored.
like. I was just thinking like the only person that I really am around very often that tells me they're bored is my 7-year-old, and that's usually because he doesn't like what we're doing at that particular moment.
Right, and that's totally common, I'm sure.
But I get it. But life, and I'm not saying this like because I think sometimes we can come across as maybe a little pompous, maybe like this is a little like, well, you are bored and I'm not bored, so clearly I have my life together and you don't. That's not the case. I just think that like it really is a mindset. It really is. Do you want to make a change in that, or is it just easier to say I'm bored because then you don't have to push your comfort zone? See, the pressure gets put on you when you have to push your comfort zone.
And so maybe it's more related to, instead of using the boring word of bored, maybe it's free time. Maybe it's too much free time. Again, like the book says, it's this amount of free time that people have. They don't know what to do with it.
But then you ask people, and they're like, I have no time for that.
Right. So it's making the time.
Right. I mean, I think it's just kind of like a bigger picture just comes down to like, do you get meaning out of what it is you're doing? And are you feeling fulfilled and present? Those are like very existential ideas.
Yeah. So, again, I mean, you kind of have this very interesting work balance between the two things you do. And at the same time, I'm sure they have their similarities. I mean,
absolutely.
You're talking to people essentially, both routes. One's just behind a microphone. One's probably one-on-one, mostly in face-to-face.
Yeah.
Tell me like, what is it about that that's like, obviously you've been doing it for a long time, right? Mm-hmm. How long?
Radio's 16 years this last June.
Okay. And then the
therapy,
licensed therapy.
I started grad school in like 2008. So I've been licensed now for 3 or 4 years now. I don't even remember, but the whole process started a long time ago, right after my oldest was born.
Right. And so obviously it's enjoyable.
Oh yeah. I started teaching this year too.
Mm-hmm. What do you think as like for you, like, say go from the beginning, like when the radio part of it started, I'm guessing this is something on air you don't get to talk about much because I'm assuming the format's a little bit shorter than something like this.
Yeah.
So like what do you think people would find shocking about you, knowing you now, as opposed to when you first started?
Oh, well, I got into radio. I mean, I listened to it and I've been listening forever, but like, I was like an ag kid, straight A student. I graduated at 16, like pretty much had my life ahead of me in terms of like working for family business. And then I wanted to hang out at a radio station and, my parents were kind of horrified, I think, because that's the job route I went. But no, I mean, like I am a totally. It gave me an opportunity to grow up and figure out who I was, because I know I'd have been miserable. I'd have been miserable and depressed if I followed that path that I started back when I was 16. Graduating high school.
As a radio personality, is that like an appropriate term?
Yeah.
How do you do that to a licensed therapist? It's like it's almost kind of like me as a tattoo artist. I should probably get into licensed therapy too.
Well, so real quick, a couple of things like what Isabel's talking about. Like I'm on a regular basis, just dumbfounded that people like listening to me. And I think that's what's made me, and it's not from an insecurity thing. Like I don't think it comes from a place of, I think it's just this like still kind of innocent, like really? Like really, like this, you like that? You feel connected? You think I'm cool? You want to take a picture? So I think that's what's made made me good at what I do is that I'm incredibly appreciative and humble in a lot of ways. So anyways, I was just thinking about that because like people will come out to see me and I'm like, really? Like, it's just, I don't know. It warms my heart. It makes me feel very special because I realize that people have a lot of time. Don't have a lot of time to do things. And so if I can make people feel connected, especially through one-way communication, mostly, that makes me excited. For therapy, I am a firm believer in the ability to be a well-adjusted person. I don't say happy because I think happy is a manufactured term that people are like, I just want to be happy. Like, what does that even mean? But therapy, I believe that like, that's my high when I see people like get it, when they like start to have some self-worth and they start to make these changes and they start to get excited. I'm like, oh, give it to me. You know what I mean? Like, so I just like to witness that. Like, that's my high. People are my high. And I just want to be able to like help facilitate that in some small way.
That's great. And so the two are kind of similar in that.
Oh, absolutely. It's about connection.
Right.
I'm a connection junkie.
Yeah. So if it's connection, what do you think about the idea of like that? It's a sharing thing, right? Like you're connecting through sharing. Like
right.
Obviously you're sharing something, somebody else is sharing something. With the radio is a little different because you're sharing. Has there been a difference, do you think, in radio, let's say years ago, as opposed to today where, it's a lot easier to share what you're doing in different forms. Like a lot of times you do Facebook Live, right?
I got into radio because I didn't want people to see me. I'm telling you this as you're recording this on camera. It makes me incredibly uncomfortable. For the first, I'm going on 9 years, I had a real hard time being in a studio with anybody.
Wow.
I would just talk to myself. I talk like I'm talking to one person on the other end. When people would come in and want to watch me, I'd be horrified. And now I work in a studio that's all windows, and I'm constantly feel like I'm in a fishbowl, literally, and I share the room with other people. And we're doing things like Facebook Live or social media where I'm having to think of, oh my gosh, now people can be super critical and like, what do I look like? And how's this come across? And am I doing something weird with my face? And so that's how it's changed.
It's kind of funny because on a basic level, just hearing your own voice is odd. It's especially for the first, you get used to it. I think eventually you do. Absolutely. It takes time. And then like amping it up and seeing it on video is like even kind of more weird, but then like recording yourself, it almost like takes it to a whole nother stage of like, okay, now I got audio, I got video, and I'm alone, or I'm doing it by myself. It's odd. But it's funny too, because a lot of times that's just our own personal experience with it. That's what you think about it. But other people watching it, they think, oh man, she looks great on, like they don't think any of those things. They're just consuming you, or they're just enjoying, what you're sharing.
I think though, the part that makes it like, what I try and do is like, I share that experience that I'm feeling uncomfortable or awkward or weird, because then I just want to normalize that a lot of people feel that way. Like I was having this conversation with a friend yesterday. We met up for lunch and she had told her husband like, oh, I'm going to go see Skip. And, talk about like this is how you have therapist friends. We're going to talk about relationships and personal growth. And he was like what is, he has this like false understanding that I've got it all figured out. And I realized that like I do kind of portray that sometimes, but really like the more I learn, the less I have figured out. And so it's just kind of funny because you get really good at faking it. So what I'm saying is that like I like to open up that door, that window, so people understand that, to kind of normalize it, if that makes sense.
Right.
I don't know.
So I'm always interested in the morning show part of it, with you doing the Facebook Live and being on camera, and we've gone
I hate it.
Yes,
I hate it.
So we've gone backpacking together, and I filmed you pretty much the whole time.
I hate it.
You guys can see that. I believe I did post it on YouTube. It's definitely on her Instagram site. You can see a small clip of it. And I don't think anybody would say that it looked like you hated it, or that you were uncomfortable, or that you didn't look like you were enjoying it. I'm going to guess that there was some levels of like, this guy took me in the woods and has a camera. Like, what's going on here? This is very strange. And now we're sitting in this little tiny room and dude's got a camera again. Awkward.
And every time I hang out with you, I literally look like hell. Like we don't have showers. Here today, like I came over after I had a blowout with my 7-year-old and I'm just like, oh, And then you're like, said something about wearing a beanie, and I'm like, what are you talking about? And then you tell me the camera's gone. I'm like, oh my God. Yes. So anyway.
So it wasn't planned to wear beanies and match today.
I totally match you. At least you didn't wear your flannel.
I was so contemplating it, like maybe something button up, look a little more, astute for this extravaganza.
I got this for $12 at Costco.
Well,
it's my fancy.
I do have a blue one too, but I don't want to look like gang members. We live in a town. I got to be careful.
Yeah.
I might have a beard, but
I got told I looked butch the other day. Well, they saw my haircut and they said I looked butch. I'm like, I'm pretty sure there's nothing about all this. Hey, if like butch is your look you're going for, that's totally fine too.
Is that a look?
It can be. Yeah. It could be a term that people like to use. But I was just like, I got into a little bit of it with like, my femininity is not measured by my hair length.
I think I saw that.
Yeah.
I think you had a conversation.
Yeah. But back to your videoing me. Do you know that video that you made is the first time I've actually ever watched myself on video? I've been on TV. I've done interviews. I never watch any of them.
So this is the Instagram post that we made, or I think I shared it on YouTube.
Yeah, I think you did. And then you did like a 1-minute clip. Mm-hmm. But I've done interviews since I was a kid. Cause like when I was in 4-H and FFA and stuff like that, like, you'd get interviewed by the news or you'd go and do a segment or this. And I've purposely never watched any of them. So I pretend like they're not on.
And you've been on camera before. So yes. This is the first time you've watched it. Mm-hmm. I feel honored to say that you've probably at least watched it a few times.
I have. A few. And I shared it, which is even more weird. But now it's so funny because I'm like in my head going, no, it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. It's not somewhere out there in a vault. It doesn't exist. If I don't say it, it doesn't exist.
It's not real.
It's not
real. If you can't see me, I'm not here.
Yeah.
That's funny. Well, I plan on putting you on camera many more times. But eventually you'll get, how long did you think it took for you to get used to being on the radio and doing live stuff, right? Some of it's pre-recorded.
Yeah. If we do pre-record, it's like a minute or two kind of ahead to try and get elements in and have the best production value. But yeah, I think I feel pretty natural, but some of that's come in the last couple of years, but it's also when I'm in my contained space and I have control over things. Like if I'm out doing a broadcast somewhere, it gets a little more hectic. Mm-hmm. But yeah, maybe you have a good point there, but I don't know. What's
something you think, because I'm interested personally in this, what's something that you've done or something somebody shared with you or you've discovered that has helped you along that way, like just to kind of get used to being, whether it be on video, which you just don't have much of a choice. I'm going to keep the cameras on, or specifically starting out with, being live broadcasted. Like, what's something you've done? Is it just experience, just getting over it, just getting the exposure and doing it?
Yeah, and I think I've just embraced the fact that I'm going to always feel a little uncomfortable, and I'm vocal about it. Because then if I'm vocal about it, you can't throw that in my face. Like, it's a little self-deprecating, but not to the point where it's like uncomfortable for other people, but I just feel like if I'm just honest about it, and I don't get defensive, and I try and like when I mess something up, I'm like, okay, well, what'd you expect? I'm not a professional here. I think it's just kind of, I don't know, it takes the pressure off. Like, because the reality is this in terms of radio, it could end tomorrow. Like careers end with no notice. So I'm going to ride this ride as long as I can. And I've always had a backup plan and something else, but I'm going to enjoy it, but also not take myself too incredibly seriously.
Right. And I would say that's definitely something that helps. Sometimes I have a tendency to just wait absolutely over. We were talking earlier about just sticking in your head, and it just, sometimes you're in your mind too much thinking about things you need to stop and get out. And I tend to do that when it comes to creating things. And I just realized sometimes just go do it. Like the pressure doesn't have to be super high, and and again too, also the urgency of doing it and not trying not to take it too seriously. So for me, the idea, like you said too, of it going away, it could be gone tomorrow. Those things happen. Who am I? I'm just some dude sitting in a room with a microphone. You, on the other hand, make it special being here and on camera. But let's say that, you're a movie star or a one-hit wonder musician or anybody, that's in the public eye and any level of popularity in the media. and how many people are gone? You don't know about them anymore.
You don't think about them.
Yeah, like these people have done amazing things, or people today still doing amazing things, and we don't know about them. And so if that's possible for them, like for it's just to go, to be over, it is for all of us, and to find I think of it this way. Pretty soon, let's say virtual reality, not to take it too techie, but virtual reality just takes over all media and all experiences. You don't need to go to Paris anymore because you can just go and sit in your room for 20 bucks.
I think me and you differ on this one.
Well, I'm just saying, for an example, let's hypothetically say that people are doing this. Instead of going to Paris, they're sitting there in a sort of virtual world in Paris or whatever it may be. You could say, well, then doing podcasts and doing video work and me being a photographer, videographer, or tattoo artist is going to be absolutely irrelevant. Well, the tattooing, I'm pretty safe. As a service business and a handcrafted business, it'd be really hard for virtual reality to take that over. But if you live in a virtual world where you already have the tattoos you want, and it only cost you $5 and it just is on there automatically, why would you go through the risk? So hypothetically speaking, saying that's maybe, let's say it's 20 years, 5 or 10, but let's say it's 20 years away. Then everything I'm doing today could be irrelevant to an extent, but I still have the ability to share stories and create things and think constructively. And to me, finding that value in it, like you were saying with sharing and connecting, I mean, you're on the radio and then you're working as a licensed therapist. If you're sharing and connecting with people, that's the skill. That's the value you're bringing to people.
The impact that you're leaving. So a couple things on that. I think that, this goes back to the whole boredom talk, and what we're talking about. Like, people want connection. We are hardwired for connection. And so I'm fortunate enough that all of my careers are in connection. And also in terms of like, it could be gone tomorrow, so I'm going to appreciate it today. But my worth isn't wrapped up in that. Mm-hmm. Like, over the years, maybe there were parts that were like very much attached to it. But as I've matured, I've realized that there's more to it. But really, it all comes down to connection. Like, if you're connected to people and that includes yourself, then I don't know that you're ever going to be bored.
That's for sure. Especially if you're connected to yourself.
You really have to be.
Yeah, I think it's impossible if you enjoy your own company to ever be bored.
Like, I'm pretty rad. I don't mind hanging out by myself.
I've heard that you're pretty rad. That's why I got the cameras on, so I can go back and look to see. But I've heard you're pretty rad.
Gonna be like, look at her. Like, so here's a great example of like how I like to explain what's going on in my internal world. So we're sitting here and we're on camera, and I'm very quietly playing with a pen because I'm very nervous. So I'm like, well, hopefully it's not making too much sound. And then in my head, I'm going, are you even making any sense right now? Like, you're going to, like, when somebody goes back and listens to this, are they going to be able to follow your train of thought? Or are you going to sound like a complete idiot? And then, so it's all of those things. Like, am I sitting up straight enough? Like, maybe I'm slouched over. Can you see that
a lot of things going through your head.
There's a million things going through my head at one moment. So.
Well, that's great. Well, then I'll expose myself a little. All I'm thinking is, this is the first podcast I've ever done. And how do I facilitate the idea that, like, you're here, you're interesting, you have we've been friends for a while now. Actually, I think it's just been a year. Yes. I just got my little Facebook thing because you gave me my tattoo. Yep. So it's been a year. You came to me just going to expose that for a minute. The first time I met you, I had no idea what to think about you. I met you through my cousin. Well, we, I guess, kind of got in communication through my cousin. And I needed a tattoo after a horrible time in my life. Right. And then here I am, just some dude tattooing away. And I had no idea what to think of you. And I think we did a consultation first, and you came back for the appointment. And the person I met at the consultation is not at all the person I thought I was going to tattoo. Ooh, what'd you think? Be honest. No, you should be honest. Kind of. No, you should be honest. Because most of the time now, for those that, before you jump into this, most of the time people think like, well, I have resting bitch face. Check. I come across as unapproachable or intimidating. Check. You see what I mean? And I'm just like behind that, just like all the opposite. So yes. Yeah. And yes. Yeah, no, it's kind of funny. I mean, my first impression, I like to be really open-minded, and especially because I know people sometimes just, you never know what's going on during your day. I don't know. Like maybe your car broke down and you're just trying not to yell at me on the way here. You got a flat tire and you're just trying to be cool.
I was
without,
actually
like, freaking out.
meeting you, and then I think maybe was going from the gym, and then I was going to go to work, and then I had to pick up the kids, and I had already worked at the radio station in the morning. So yeah.
You had a lot to do.
Yeah.
So my first impression, I'll be very blunt with it, was I had no idea how to read you. I was like, I don't know. Like, she doesn't seem like a very upbeat person at all. Like that, which is surprising because getting to know you that's not true at all. Or at least not when I've ever hung out with you.
Guarded.
Yeah. So, but yeah, first I'm like, what is the deal? And then I think it took us hours to get started on a tattoo that only took us 20 minutes.
Yeah, because you messed up. You made it too big because you weren't paying attention.
Yeah, I didn't permanently mess up.
No, but we were talking so much that we didn't like put the stencil thing on to check that if it actually fit my forearm.
Just for the record, though, it's lettering, and I did spell it right.
It did. We triple spelled it.
Yes.
Triple spell check.
It worked out well. So yeah, that was my first impression. But getting to know you, like, again, like sitting here, this is what's going through my head, my exposure. You were worried about the way your beanie looked, and I was thinking gang colors. But anyway, if we both wore blue and had beanies on, it might be weird. But my point is that getting to know you, it's like, wow, like I get to sit here and do my first podcast with Skip. Like, this is rad. How do I pull out the interesting stuff? Like, you're working in broadcasting professionally, and people hear you every day, right? Like, are you on certain days or not?
Monday through Friday.
6
to 10.
And so Monday through Friday, 6 to 10, people are being exposed to you, and you're connecting with them, and you've been doing it for a long time. So like, that's to me interesting enough for me. Like, how am I going to find out how to pull out the interesting stuff that people can't hear while you're being broadcasted? Like, you're kind of in a different sort of, like, would you say there's a difference between like being broadcasted for, like, what's the longest you're on air live?
Long breaks go 7-8 minutes.
So,
but those don't happen very often. Like, I'm much more comfortable at 4 to 5, and that's when I'm interacting with somebody. So
that's a lot different than an environment like this.
Very different, yeah.
Which I like. I think your voice is probably going to sound different to people. The things they're going to hear, there's probably things. It's almost kind of like maybe taking a lot of 6-minute segments, putting them together, and sharing something that's on live broadcast on a radio station. This isn't really the dialogue.
Oh, right? No, absolutely not.
So to me, that's what I was thinking about this whole time.
So I'm in I call it performance monkey mode, which is it's still honest, but it's the performance monkey mode part of me. And I was kind of uncomfortable when we started. And now I'm getting a little more comfortable sitting here in my seat and talking to you. But yeah, no, they're different.
Performance monkey mode.
That's what I call it. Like, and I can turn it on. I can turn it on, and it's interesting. So like, if I have to get in front of a group of people and like I actually have to see people, I will start talking, and I can't tell you when I'm done talking what I said, but I know it all made sense. Like, it's just this kind of automatic, I can't like flow of things. And most of the time I'm like, well, I hope that went well, because I don't remember any of it.
You should say that after every, I don't know, maybe not after every broadcast, but that, well, I hope that went well.
That's basic. I'm like, well, you didn't pay for it, so it can't be.
That's great.
Can't get your money back.
That's awesome. And then same thing with the therapy. I mean,
that they pay for, so I better do it right.
So that's, and you can't leave that one saying, oh, well, that went well. Or maybe you can.
I can leave going, I gave it my best, and they have to do with it what they're going to do with it. Like, that's something that they do teach as you become a therapist. And it's also something that they should teach radio personalities is like, if you do your best and then you walk away, I mean, some days maybe it's not your best. Some days maybe you're struggling a little bit. But like, and you walk away going, well, I did it. Now it's on them, right? You disconnect from it. Don't take personal responsibility, and then,
And don't take your work home. Or do you take your work home?
I think about stuff sometimes, but no, I don't. I don't take personal responsibility for people. I can't.
I was just reading recently the difference between what would be considered a career and what's considered a job. Mm-hmm. A lot of people say, I work hard at my career, their 9-to-5 job, they go to work for somebody else. And it was interesting that a clear definition that was pointed out was that the difference between a career and a job is that a career, you go home and you're still working and you're enjoying it. A job is something you go to, you get told what to do, you clock out, you leave, and you check out, and you don't want to bring it home.
Right.
You don't even look forward to bringing it home. Matter of fact, most people tell you, like, hey, leave work at work, and when you're home, be home. And then the career part of it's a lot different, where it's something probably you've chose to do, and you actually look forward to doing. You bring work home with you with a smile on your face, or at least proud to do it. Not literally always smiling, but you look forward to it. So would you say that there's like what's your take on that in terms of being on the radio, because you're being broadcasted, but then you're also kind of enjoying the sort of the aftermath of like the social media life of it, kind of like connecting to people.
So when I say I leave stuff at work, like I try to leave like negative feedback at work. I try and leave like really troubling situations. Like if there's someone I'm worried about in terms of like, is this person going to relapse? Is this person going to, what's going to happen with them when they leave from like a therapy standpoint? Like I try and leave that at work. Now, all the other stuff I certainly take home. Like I'm constantly coming up with ideas and writing them down, or thinking maybe I'll try this, or maybe, this will be something that will be an analogy that I'll be able to use. So in that regard, it's very rarely turned off. Mm-hmm. Because I guess the way I just put this together, like my life experiences, period, lend very well to both of those careers. And so people ask me sometimes, like, I get kind of mad. They're like, well, what are you, like you work too much, you do too much. I'm like, no, I don't. Like I'm squeezing every single minute out of the day. Now, yeah, I should sleep more. But like, I love what I do. Don't tell me I need to do less of it. Like from the minute I get up in the morning, some days are hard. Like I'd rather sleep in or this or that, but like I absolutely love what I do. And I feel like I have a solid balance, because once I'm out. I can go enjoy my kids, my relationships, all those things. But like, no, like I'm not giving that up.
So what's been something that's been a little bit more, it doesn't have to be negative or positive, but something that's tricky to deal with in the sense of, working in broadcast and, being in front of the public, 5 days out of the week? What's something you've had to deal with? And then also you have a social media presence. Mm-hmm. So that all combined, like, I assume there's going to be some things that pose some interesting scenarios or situations.
Well, I always have to think that there could be someone watching. And that sounds creepy, but it's true, because like I never know when I'm going to cross paths with people. So it's something like, if I'm going to, this sounds so dumb, but like I can't go out looking totally wrecked, because that's when I'm going to run into somebody. Like I can't lose my
street cred.
Well, no, like I can't lose it and be rude to somebody in public, because what if, and not that I would anyways, but like, because that's who could be around watching. I mean, like I went hiking the other day. I mean, when we went hiking, we went backpacking, and we ran into somebody I knew. Now that person I knew from therapy, not from like a client, but from school. Like I'm always running into people. And so that gets a little hard. Yeah. The other part is, I was explaining this to my son when he was throwing a fit on my way here. He's like, I get triggered and I get mad. He's 7. You want me to talk about my emotions, and I'm talking about them. And I'm like, well, you know what? We all get triggered, but we have to control it. And I think the thing that I was telling him, like, people are mean. Like I would say that 0.25% of my interactions with people are mean, but man, those stick. People will say mean things to you, and they feel like they can just say them because you're on the radio or you have a presence. Like the guy who was like, you look really butch, I don't like it. Well, you know what? Just because you have a Facebook account doesn't mean you need to go and have an opinion and voice it on somebody's haircut, or.
Do you respond like to that?
Nicely. Nicely. And I do that on purpose, because I don't want to I could tear you apart from the inside out. Okay.
But people are watching.
No, but that's not the person I am.
Right.
Because I am smart, and I do have a background in psychology, and I also have an intuitive sense of connecting to people. I want to use that power for good and not evil. So when you come at me, I mean, I've had people say horrible things, like horrible things. I'll show you off the air one particular. And it's a troll account, by the way, I found out afterwards. But I need to set an example. And if I'm setting an example to my kids and to other people watching, like I can't come at somebody and rip them up. I could burn you down from the inside out. Again, you would, physical pain would be better than the emotional pain I could cause. Now that said, I don't want to go there. I'm not that kind of person.
Right.
By the way, I realize that that's like putting myself out there by saying that, but we all have we all have a dark side. Part of humanity is we have a dark side and we need to recognize it, because if you stuff it in the closet, you're just lying to yourself and everybody. Right. But anyway, that's hard. Like, people have said really, really, really shitty things to me.
Wow.
And so that part's hard. So to try and shake that off and not take it personally after you've had a bad day is hard.
Yeah, that's got to be. I mean, I don't have to deal with that sort of thing with my line of work, but you know, you kind of mentioned a few minutes ago that reminded me of something though that kind of does remind me of my work, which is being behind a camera when I'm doing photography or video work. I feel like a creeper. Like, I literally feel like I'm spying on people. There's times where it's like, oh, I'm going to go hide over here and like get some candid moments. And it feels like almost on a regular basis, unless I'm one-on-one with somebody and I should be shooting them, you know, whether it be modeling or, you know, some sort of self-portrait or something, or a personal portrait, doing like scenes with people and say I'm in their house. Like, I was just shooting a wedding and their reception was at their home. And I'm like on this spiral staircase, like kind of hidden in the corner because I had a zoom lens and I had to stand really far away. I was in this dark corner up on this staircase trying to get these photos, and two of the groomsmen walked in the front door and saw me, and I'm just thinking, like, is it okay that I'm here?
By the way, for those listening to, Josh is a very imposing kind of person. I mean, right now you're wearing a black, I don't know, it has a pentagram on it and full beard, shaved head, tattoos. Like, that can be a little...
Especially when you have a camera and you're in a dark corner with everybody dressed formally for a wedding.
Right. Like, you stand out. So you have to be aware of that.
Yeah. And I am too. And you know, what's funny is I don't see it. I mean, personally, I live with me every day. So like that part of it, I don't really notice it, but and I forget about it sometimes until I either see somebody is standing next to me and I see like a glimpse in a mirror and I'm like, oh, I look much different than they do. I tower over them and I'm bearded and wear dark clothing. It's a little bit strange. It can be. And that's, to me, someone who's used to it every day. And I just went to the store today to grab something to drink. And there was a guy talking to one of his customers, the clerk was, and he saw me come up to the thing. And this guy commented on my beard, and the customer. And then the clerk said, you should see him without the beard. He's actually even more intimidating. And I'm like,
I've just seen photos.
Really? But I've heard the exact opposite. Usually like the beard's more intimidating. But anyway, so apparently that's just part of my persona that I have to be aware of.
Oh,
but I forget about it all the time.
All the time too, because I don't know. I get it all the time.
And I have, you know, if you're tattooed, especially heavily tattooed, or have a few of them showing and people notice them, a lot of times it's almost like natural reaction if they like tattoos to just say, hey, nice tattoos, right? Like you get it often. I'm guessing, especially you probably get it often where people are saying, hey, I like your tattoos, or they mention it. I can't think of one time in my life where anybody's ever looked at me and said, hey, I like your tattoos. I just don't get that response from people. And that is kind of a cue that maybe they see this big bearded tattooed tall guy.
You're intimidating.
I think that's what but that's weird to me. It is weird. But it's cool.
But you have to be aware of it.
Yeah. I try, but I forget about it all the time. I almost feel like if I go to a little kid to like get his ball that was rolling across the road to try to help him, his parents are going to come out there with a shock and be like, get away from my kids. No, I don't think
get
that's
away
the
from
case.
this big scary man.
That's awesome. So we kind of talked about, you were talking about, well, you specifically said good and evil, which I like those terms because I don't use them in like necessarily a spiritual sort of like way.
Yeah, I'm not
and
going
nothing
there either.
supernatural.
Yeah.
It's just the good or the bad. You can call it whatever you want, like good, evil, dark, light, whatever, right, wrong. And the end of this book is exactly that. So I guess that's kind of something worth mentioning. I'll read just the very last, I think it's the last sentence. And the very last sentence of this whole book says...
What a poetic way to end this, too.
And it works perfectly for what you said. Wait, does that mean you want to end it?
No, I'm just saying, like, sometimes things just unravel the way they...
I know how you have to end it. I hope that went well.
Yeah.
That's how you had to end it. So it says, after all, man is the being who invented the gas chambers of Auschwitz. However, he is also the being who entered those gas chambers upright with the Lord's Prayer on his lips.
That's intense.
That's an observation for somebody, again, who clearly was, in the midst of it. and a psychiatrist, somebody who knows how to kind of see these things for what they are, probably more than I would say like an average person, because they understand what people are doing. And for him to say, that dichotomy between, the people who were imprisoned people and then the people who were in prison, and that's intense.
Oh,
that's crazy. So this book is now for you. I highlighted a ton.
I do that
made a bunch
too.
of marks,
too.
but only, you know what? I shouldn't even say this, but only towards the end, like the last few chapters, I got to this point where I was reading the book, just enjoying it. And then I got to this point where I'm like, this is getting really heavy. And I thought I had a lot left, but is it the foreword that's at the end? But anyway,
the foreword's in the beginning. But.
4. Yeah, I guess I should say. So at the end, there's this, somebody wrote something, the afterword.
Okay.
Anyway.
I was just going to wait to
I freshly painted this wall. I warned you. I freshly painted this wall to my left. So the fumes are getting me. Maybe I'll just edit that out. So
nope, leave it. Makes you more approachable. You're kind of scary.
Right. The foreword. But anyway, yeah, I actually almost forgot what I was saying about that, but I thought there was more
and then
to
you got
the book.
To the end and it was just like,
and
boom, done.
And I started thinking, oh my God, this is getting really good. I need to remember. I actually wrote a bunch of it down and highlighted it and like tried to remember that the quote that I started this with, or the paragraph. I pretty much have gotten to the point where I realize I'm going to memorize it with as many times as I've tried to use it or reread it and share it. And I would like to memorize it because I think it's that good. And then, so I started highlighting and marking, and now that's for you to see. And then it was over. I'm like, damn, I almost wanted more. But anyway, you'll read it. The fact that it was over without him ever delving into it's interesting because he went through all the things that he went through, and you can kind of get a little gist of that just by those basic, paragraphs. But I don't know, it's just crazy because he never once really, I don't want to say glorifies, but he doesn't really go off on tangents about the torture or the the stuff that happened in these places.
Yeah, well, I think he wanted to, you have to keep things focused.
Mm-hmm. And this book, I think that's, for me, that's the most impressive thing about this book, is this man went through things that most of us, and hopefully never will, but we'll never have to deal with anything remotely like this. And for him to have still had the attitude that he did, going through it in the end, and then still perceiving the good in people, but also recognizing, like you said, we all have that potential. Like, we'd be silly to hide away and say, and kind of where's perfectly what you said a few minutes ago, we both have that side of us that we could potentially be harmful, and we have to be mindful to not be.
Right.
So, and that's pretty much Viktor E. Frankel's Man's Search for Meaning.
Well, I think real quick, kind of like in summary, like things come at you, and the only thing you can control is the way you interpret them. Right. So good, bad, or otherwise, I mean, try and soak up the good stuff. But when the bad stuff comes, you try and like work that in a way that doesn't destroy you, if that makes sense.
That's great. So will we be able to promise to do this again?
Mm-hmm.
This is going to happen again. So everybody hears it. Everybody's going to,
you didn't hear my stomach growling, did you?
I totally thought that was my stomach too. I'm actually very hungry. So I'm glad if we're going to blame that on you if it's in the recording. So
I just want to put that out there, clear that up.
So stomach growling, and
See,
I think that's a warning that
this is me like offering some levity and insight, because I think these are things that are important, and it, we just talked about gas chambers and
now we have
Lord's Prayer.
You're not hinting you have gas. I don't want.
No.
Okay.
Oh God, girls don't do that.
So, that's true. I checked actually. I even Googled it. I literally have Googled that before.
Okay.
Just it's. I think it's true. So we can people can find me and see more to come through this, but people can find me at joshuarayfarmer.com. I got a lot of my photography and videography work there. You can also find me at Joshua Ray Farmer on Facebook and Instagram as well. You can find Skippy at Shut Up Skippy again on Instagram, Snapchat, and Twitter. I've never used Twitter.
I just have my Facebook's tied to it. I mean, you can go to facebook.com/Skippy Radio. That's my Facebook one, but it's all my stuff automatically goes to Twitter.
Great.
I got enough stuff going on, I don't need more.
Awesome. Well, thank you for doing this with me. I look forward to doing it again. Yeah. Until
hopefully
next time.
It went all right.
Yeah. Gosh, I hope that went okay.
Hope that didn't suck too bad. We're just getting started though. So if it's, it's our first one. So if it did, then we're cool.
Yeah. No, I think it's great. So thank you.
You're welcome.